that optimistic estimation that the war in Iran might end in a week or two was made before this breaking news we've been following today that a U.S. fighter jet has reportedly been shot down over Iran. We know at least two pilots were in that fighter jet. One has been rescued, is reportedly receiving treatment right now. He is alive. We want to bring in right now a live interview with Lieutenant General Bill Caldwell, retired U.S. Army officer. Lieutenant Caldwell, you have been a great resource for us in the military perspective, so we appreciate you joining us today to talk about the context about what's going on here. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Savannah. Glad
So,
to.
yeah, I want to start by asking, what are the immediate priorities in your mind that happens when something like this does happen, when we get a report of a fighter jet being shot down?
Well, Savannah, if I could put it in context, first of all, for all of us who are in the military or have served, we're praying right now for those men and women over there who are involved in the search and rescue for the missing crew member from that airplane. What I've not been able to ascertain, I hear people saying they got shot down. It could have been an aircraft that had a malfunction and went down.
Mm.
We've flown over 12,000 missions over there. The probability of an aircraft having some sort of mechanical problem is enormous when you fly that many missions. So, by all probability, it may have been shot down. I think we're still waiting to hear whether it was just a malfunction that occurred. But what we have heard, and we can feel very confident, one of the two crew members, either the pilot or the weapons systems officer, as they call it, the WISO, have been rescued, which means we had immediately on the ground, on site, men and women, search and rescue, combat search and rescue folks from the United States Air Force, could have been out of Moody Air Force Base. They have that capability from there, that were on the ground and picked up that one member and brought him or her home already and are out actively searching for the other one right now.
Hmm.
As
Yeah.
I listen to Al Jazeera News, they're over in the Middle East. I hear them saying that the TV network there in Iran is asking their people, if you see this other pilot, let us know.
Mm.
So I'm not, I think the pilot may still be doing escape and evasion. They're taught that in training. They're briefed on it just before they go on a mission. So I'm incredibly still hopeful and praying that this is all going to turn out positively, and that our men and women who are putting their lives at risk to find this one Air Force officer are able to do so.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? You bring up such a good point of clarification that we don't have official confirmation from the White House directly about exactly what happened here. Obviously, the priority is this search and rescue. I want to talk about what you mentioned about those evade tactics, but first, let's talk about the search and rescue side of things. What does that look like in a case like this?
Well, before we even began the operations over there in Iran, we pre-positioned forward into theater in multiple locations the search and rescue capability that would always be on the ground, ready to move in should an aircraft ever go down, be shut down, have malfunctions, and go down, so that we can immediately rescue and bring home our crew members. So there's a lot of assets over there already. They were put right into play. We've got specialized helicopters that the Air Force has, which have medics on board that would have gone right in. Along with that, special C-130, they're the four propeller cargo airplanes that are especially fitted and pilots specifically trained to fly low level, all kinds of weather to get in there and do that search and rescue. You can be assured special operating forces have already been moved into probably Iran themselves and already are on the ground doing some searching themselves. I mean, this will be an all out effort by the United States military to bring our one service member home because we never leave anybody behind.
Mm, yeah. And what does it say to you? And does it say anything? I mean, I guess in my experience and just from a reporting standpoint, it is relatively or unusual to see, low flying helicopters, things like that at wartime at a time like this. What does that say to you about the prioritization that the U.S. government is putting on this rescue mission?
Well, I've heard people say that, I thought we had air dominance and we already destroyed their Air Force. Listen, no, we'll never 100% eliminate their ability to shoot a missile up in the sky at one of our aircraft, and that may have been what happened. We don't know yet, and that can never be 100% eliminated because there's little handheld missiles you can fire from the ground that a regular infantry soldier could fire on the ground. So there are people are always at risk, but we at will have been flying helicopters, these A-10 aircraft, real low to the ground, supporting operations there too now for over a week. To the point we're deploying more of them forward from the United States. They've been moving over the last couple of days, even more going into theater to support that because we do have air dominance. We control the air, but it doesn't mean we've eliminated everything. And I think a lot of Americans might get that confused because they've heard us say, well, we obliterate their Air Force, we obliterated this. Well, we have, but they still have minutiae amounts of capability that if we're not careful, they can still employ and use against us and do some harm to our men and women.
Yeah. Talk to me about the training that, these servicemen and women have as far as evading capture. I was reading some reports that there was some sort of, and I'm not sure if you saw this, potentially reward being offered for the capture of these pilots. Obviously, as we've said, one is back in our custody and is recovering, but one potentially still down there, still alive. What does that look like for that person?
Well, you can be assured what they go through what is called SEER, survival, escape, resistance, and evasion training. I have a son-in-law who's an F-35 pilot, and he went through SEER training about a year and a half ago, and I listened to him share afterwards. He couldn't tell everything that goes on. A lot of it's very classified, but they are taught to endure and be able to handle stressful situations like that. So that one person who's on the ground, he or she, is well trained, well equipped, completely shaken up. I haven't had to eject, obviously, but also very much reassured because in the air, they're hearing all these helicopters flying. They're hearing the C-130s flying around. I can absolutely guarantee every national asset, our Space Force, they've got satellite imagery all over that area right now. We've got, I'm sure, drones up there monitoring everything. We've already established an outer cordon, I'm sure, with what we call ISR, intelligence security reconnaissance going on, looking at what's coming in and out of there. So there's an enormous full court press. CENTCOM is not stopped, but their number one priority right now is the recovery and return of that American service member.
I feel like a lot of people are questioning now, well, if one was recovered, how far away could the other one be? Could you add some context to that question?
Yeah. The other one was probably in close proximity. Again, they've done enough studies. They know generally when the pilots eject, they can tell you about how far apart that does, and they've already been using that to do the mapping. And they've started with a small concentric circle, and they're working their way out right now from the location where that other and they've got great visual imagery. I don't doubt for a minute they actually have pictures of those two ejecting that they've been able to pull down from radar right now from satellite and look at, and they can probably see the exact location where that either the weapons systems officer or the pilot, whichever the second one was, where they landed. And I can assure you that right now there's a special operating team that's geared up. Blades are probably even churning as they sit there on the tarmac on the ground, waiting to go into and help extract it, just in case there's an enemy force, an Iranian force moving in to grab that American. But they're ready to go in and do combat to bring our one American home safely.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
And the people in the Air Force, let me tell you, those pilots and those crew members and those helicopters and C-130s, we call them the Combat King and the Pave Hawk helicopter and the Combat King aircraft. They're the best of the best, highly trained, highly skilled. They themselves can go in if they locate that person and start to extract them all by themselves.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You touch on an important point about that. This likely isn't as easy as this person just walking out and waving their hands. I
Yeah.
mean, when we talk about this person being in, and I believe this is a mountainous region of Iran, so the geography poses its own concerns. But if there are forces looking to detain this person in Iran, I mean, what does that look like? It's not so simple, like I said, of just coming and waving a flag.
Yeah, they're when you look at the time period, they're ahead of us. So it's getting to be dark now over there, and that's good. In the favor of the Americans because we can come in with infrared and start looking at heat sources on the ground. We can start inserting ground forces that can start moving around in the locations where we think that other service member may be. It's to our advantage for it to be night, and so these next 6 to 12, 18 hours are going to be so critical in bringing that service member home as long as they have not come into contact with any kind of Iranian element that's not friendly towards America.
And if that is the case, what are the likely next steps there? Obviously, we absolutely hope that it's not, but is the government likely preparing for that possibility?
Um, I can carry to you that there's already a team spinning up, starting to look at the possibilities and analyzing where, if somebody were detained, they might be moved to and how to possibly interdict. Um, at this point, I can tell you they've already got the CIA involved. I mean, they literally every asset in America has come to a halt to pause and say, okay, what can we do help in this effort to bring our American service member home safely?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's that important to us. It really is, and that's where those of us who have served have always felt so comfortable being put into harm's way because we know that the full resources of America, not just the military, but the full resources of America, will be behind bringing us home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. The relationship between news media and the government during wartime is an interesting one. I was watching live coverage this morning on, CNN, Fox News Channel, and they were saying that they had heard these reports well before we actually went on air and reported it, was waiting for the US government to confirm that the president had been briefed. How does that balance work with the government releasing information in a way that will keep the public up to date about what's going on, but not release anything confidential? And is there anything that you think is happening that is not being released for those
Oh,
reasons?
oh yeah, I'm absolutely convinced at this point there's a lot more that's out there that they're only not releasing for the safety and the recovery of that American Air Force officer because they want to bring him or her home safely. So they will constantly put that person's life first with whatever information. And they're hesitant to come out right away and confirm anything because then that just confirms to the Iranian regime
Mm-hmm.
that, in fact, what they think is happening is, in fact, happening. Right now, all they know is that there is a F-15E down. It had two members, a pilot and a weapon systems officer, and one of them have been brought back safely already. That's all that we've kind of put out, and personally, that's all I really want our government to be saying at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and reassuring the American public, especially the family of those two members, that we're doing everything possible to bring the last one home too.
Yeah, I think this is one of those times that we as media sit back and we wait and we pray and we hope for the best possible scenario that this American is returned to his family or his or her family safely.
Yeah.
And that's all we can hope for right now. Is there anything else you wanted to add or mention before we let you go?
Now, I think the big thing is just I don't think anybody should be disillusioned by what occurred. It may not have been a shoot down, like I said. It could have been a malfunction. Even if it was a shoot down, it doesn't. I, I get concerned when people start hearing we've decimated something and they think there's no capability left. There always is a residual capability left. There always is, of some small amount. It's been mitigated tremendously, but that's why when those men and women go up in those airplanes and they go out on mission, they are on their they are alert, they're ready, they've been well prepared, they've rehearsed, they've discussed all the alternatives, because we take nothing for granted ever when you go out on a mission.
Yeah. Well, you have offered such helpful and insightful context, Lieutenant General Caldwell. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.